a werewolf romance audiobook written by Joyce Meyer. My grandfather's hands were shaking, not from age, though he was old enough that silver threaded through his dark hair like frost. Not from cold. The fire burned hot enough to make me sweat in my thin dress. He was shaking because of what he was about to tell me. "Martha," he said, his voice still carrying that alpha rumble that could make grown wolves drop to their knees. "I need you to understand something before I'm gone. Something the pack doesn't know. Something history got wrong." I leaned forward, my wolf pressing against my ribs with curiosity. Outside, the full moon climbed through winter branches, calling to every shifter in the realm. But grandfather had asked me here tonight specifically, had waited until I turned 18, had waited until I was old enough to carry the weight of truth. "What is it?" I whispered. His amber eyes, those legendary eyes that had stared down enemy alphas and watched kingdoms burn, met mine. And what I saw there made my breath catch. Regret. Bone-deep, soul-crushing regret. "I was never an alpha, Martha." The words came out broken, like each one cost him blood. "I was only a boy who survived when everyone else died, and they made me a legend for it." The confession hung between us like smoke. Everything I'd believed about my grandfather, about power, about destiny, about what it meant to be alpha, began to fracture. Because if Lord Jerome, the wolf who'd survived death itself, who'd waged war for 15 years, and refused the throne when it was rightfully his, if he wasn't alpha, what did that make the rest of us? Chapter 1, chosen from Ash. "I don't remember my parents' faces," Grandpa Jerome said. "I remember the smell of them burning. The enemy pack had come in the night, rogues led by a wolf named Gregory the Cruel. They killed everyone in our border settlement. Mothers, fathers, children. Anyone who bore our pack's scent was slaughtered, their bodies left as a message to Alpha King Darius. This is war. I survived because I was small enough to hide in the root cellar, small enough to be overlooked when they torched our homes, small enough that when I crawled from the smoking ruins 3 days later, starving and feral, I looked more like a corpse than a child. That's when King Darius found me. I heard his war party before I saw them. The thunder of paws on frozen ground, the collective growl of 50 wolves moving as one. I should have run, should have hidden again, but I was too weak, too hungry, too broken to care if they killed me. So I sat in the ash and waited for death. The Alpha King shifted first, his massive black wolf melting into the form of a man who looked carved from storm clouds. He was everything an alpha should be, powerful, commanding, radiating authority like heat from a forge. Even at 6 years old, I felt the urge to submit, to bare my throat and beg for mercy. But I had no mercy left to beg for. "This one's alive," Darius said, and his voice carried across the ruins like thunder. The war party shifted around him, wolves becoming men and women, all of them staring at me with expressions ranging from pity to disgust. "Mercy kill?" suggested Beta Marcus, his hand already moving toward the blade at his hip. "The boy won't survive winter. Look at him." I probably should have been afraid. Instead, I just stared at the king and waited. Darius knelt in the ash beside me. This close, I could smell him. Cedar and smoke and raw power. His alpha scent should have terrified me. Instead, something in my chest stirred, whimpering, reaching toward him like a dying flame seeking oxygen. "What's your name, pup?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came. I'd forgotten how to speak, forgotten everything except hunger and ash and the smell of burning flesh. I was 6 at that time. The king studied me for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. Not with pity, but with something that looked almost like recognition. "No name, then. We'll fix that." He stood, addressing his beta. "Marcus, bring the boy. He's coming with us." "My lord." "That's an order." And just like that, my fate changed. Darius named me Jerome 3 days later, after his father, the previous Alpha King who'd united the warring packs into one realm. He said I reminded him of his father. Stubborn, watchful, too quiet to be trusted, but too resilient to ignore. He didn't save me out of kindness. Darius saved me because he'd lost his only son in battle 2 years prior, and grief had hollowed him out. He saved me because he was lonely, because he needed someone to pour his knowledge into before death claimed him too. He saved me because he saw in me what I didn't see in myself, potential. But not the potential to be alpha. The potential to survive. Chapter 2. The heir nobody wanted. "You can't be serious." Gregory's voice cut through the throne room like a blade. Around us, the pack council shifted uneasily, their wolves sensing the challenge building in the air. My own wolf pressed against my ribs, half excited, half terrified. I was 17 at the time. Alpha King Darius sat his throne with the weight of 30 years of rule pressing down on his shoulders. He looked older now, grayer. The war with the rogues had cost him more than lives. It had cost him his strength. "I've never been more serious." Darius's voice carried absolute authority, even as his hands trembled slightly on the carved armrests. "Jerome is my heir. Upon my death, he will take the Alpha King's throne." The council erupted. "He's not even your blood. Found him in the dirt like a stray. Not strong enough. Not alpha enough. Enough." Darius's alpha command rippled through the room, forcing every wolf to silence. Even me. Especially me. My gaze found Gregory across the chamber. Darius's cousin. A true-born alpha with lineage stretching back generations. His hatred burned so bright I could taste it. Bitter and metallic, like blood and old rage. Gregory had expected to inherit. Had been promised, whispered some of the pack. And now a nameless orphan stood between him and power. "The boy is weak," Gregory said, his tone carefully controlled now. "Dangerous. He shifts slower than wolves half his age. His alpha command barely makes Omega's bow. You doom this pack by placing him on the throne." It wasn't a lie. Everything Gregory said was true. I was 17 and still struggled to shift smoothly. My alpha command was pathetic compared to Darius's. Barely a whisper where it should have been a roar. In a fair fight, half the wolves in this room could destroy me. But Darius had never taught me to fight fair. "Strength isn't measured in claws alone," the king said quietly. "Jerome has something the rest of you lack. He knows how to watch, how to wait, how to endure." "Those are prey qualities," Gregory spat. "No." Darius stood, and even diminished by age, his presence filled the room. "Those are survivor qualities, and when I'm gone, this pack will need a survivor more than another warrior." The king's gaze found mine across the room, and in his eyes I saw apology. He was giving me an impossible gift. A burden I'd never asked for. A target on my back that would never fade. "I'm sorry, pup," his eyes seemed to say, "but you're all I have left." That night I couldn't sleep. My wolf paced inside me, anxious and confused. Outside my window, the moon hung heavy and full, calling to the beast that lived beneath my skin. I shifted and ran. The forest knew me better than any wolf in the pack. I'd spent years exploring these territories, learning every tree, every stream, every hiding place. While other young alphas trained in combat, I'd learned the land, learned to move through it like smoke, and beneath it all, the unmistakable scent of betrayal. Someone was hunting on packlands. Someone was hunting me. I shifted back to human, my wolf retreating with a nervous whimper. The trap was expertly hidden, designed not to kill, but to maim. To leave me vulnerable. Gregory's scent was all over it. I should have reported it to Darius. Should have exposed Gregory's treachery. But I'd learned long ago that proof meant nothing against power. Gregory had allies, resources, blood claimed to the throne. I had nothing but an old king's dying favor. So I did what I'd always done. I survived. I marked the trap's location in my memory and moved on, knowing that this was only the beginning. Gregory wouldn't stop, couldn't stop. Not as long as I stood between him and what he believed was rightfully his. 3 months later, Alpha King Darius died in his sleep, and the realm exploded into chaos. Chapter 3. Dead Men Tell No Tales. They tried to kill me at the funeral. The entire pack had gathered to honor Darius, wolves from every corner of the realm, come to pay respects to the king who'd united them. The ceremony was held at dawn in the sacred clearing, where generations of Alpha Kings had been laid to rest beneath ancient oaks. I stood at the head of my adoptive father's grave, trying to hold myself together while my world fell apart. Darius hadn't just been my king. He'd been the only father I'd ever known, the only person who'd seen value in a nameless orphan pulled from ash and death. And now, he was gone. "The heir will speak," announced Beta Marcus, gesturing for me to step forward. I felt every eye on me as I approached the grave. Some gazes held pity, others curiosity, but most held suspicion, doubt. The unspoken question that had haunted me since Darius's announcement. Why him? I opened my mouth to deliver the prepared words, something about honor and duty and continuing Darius's legacy. But before I could speak, the scent hit me. Blood. Fresh blood. My wolf surged forward, senses screaming danger. I spun toward the tree line just as the rogues attacked. They came from all sides, at least 20 of them, their eyes feral and their wolves twisted by bloodlust. The funeral dissolved into chaos as pack wolves shifted to defend themselves, snarls and screams splitting the dawn air. But the rogues weren't attacking the pack. They were attacking me. 3 wolves hit me before I could shift, driving me away from the gathered pack, into the trees. I felt teeth tear into my shoulder, claws rake across my ribs. My wolf roared with fury, but I was outnumbered, outmatched. Going to die, I thought distantly as the forest floor rushed up to meet me. Going to die, just like everyone else. Then I smelled it, Gregory's scent, thick and unmistakable among the rogues, not near them. With them. The betrayal cut deeper than any claw. Gregory hadn't just hired rogues to kill me. He'd allied with the same wolves who'd murdered Darius's son, who'd burned my settlement and orphaned me as a child. He'd allied with our greatest enemies just to claim a throne. Rage gave me strength I shouldn't have possessed. I shifted mid-fall, my wolf erupting from skin with a violence that left me dizzy. Not a smooth shift, not a powerful one, but desperate, feral, exactly what I needed. I fought like something already dead, reckless, brutal, without fear of consequence. Because what did I have to lose? I was an orphan, an outsider, a boy who'd survived his first massacre by pure luck. If I died here, who would even mourn me? Darius would, my wolf whispered. That thought steadied me, focused me. I stopped fighting to survive and started fighting to escape. I caught one rogue across the throat with my teeth, twisted away from another's lunge, and ran. Not toward the pack. Gregory's allies would be there, ready to finish what the rogues started. Not toward packlands, where they could track me easily. I ran toward the border, toward exile, toward the one place they'd never expect me to go. I ran toward death. The rogues chased me for hours. I felt my strength fading, my wounds bleeding freely, my wolf growing weaker with every mile. But I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. When I finally collapsed in a ravine 20 miles from pack territory, I heard them spread out, searching. Heard Gregory's voice calling orders, commanding them to find my body. No witnesses, he snarled. The boy dies today, and we make it look like rogues killed him. No one questions that story. I lay in the mud and blood and knew he was right. No one would question it. An unpopular heir, killed by rogues at his father's funeral. Tragic, regrettable, but not suspicious. Gregory would take the throne. The pack would accept it. And I'd be buried in an unmarked grave, forgotten as quickly as I'd been found. I waited until their search moved away, then dragged myself deeper into the ravine, into the darkness, into the unknown territories beyond Packland. I survived the first night by drinking from a stream and collapsing in a hollow log. The second night, I killed a rabbit and ate it raw, my human teeth struggling with fur and bone. By the third night, I'd learned to hide my scent, to move without sound, to exist like a ghost in the spaces between packs. Back in the realm, they held my funeral. Gregory wept convincing tears and took the Alpha King's throne. The pack mourned their lost heir for exactly 1 day before moving on, and I learned the most important lesson of my life. The dead can't claim thrones, but they can plan vengeance. Chapter 4. 13 Years of Nothing. You'd think 13 years would pass quickly in summary. They don't. Every day was a small death. Every night, a resurrection. I'd fled across the border into unclaimed territory. Wild lands between pack domains where rogues hunted and survival was measured in heartbeats. No law existed there. No alpha command. Just violence and hunger, and the constant, exhausting work of staying alive. The first year nearly killed me. I was 17, wounded, and completely alone. My wolf retreated so deep inside me I sometimes forgot he existed. I learned to shift only when necessary, learned to be more human than beast, learned to hide what I was. Because being a wolf in wild lands made you prey. I kept moving, never staying in one place long enough to leave a scent trail. I worked odd jobs in human settlements, chopping wood, clearing fields, anything that required muscle and no questions. Humans couldn't smell the wolf in me, couldn't sense the fading alpha bloodline, or the fact that I was technically a dead man. To them, I was just another drifter. Another nobody. I liked it that way. By age 20, I'd traveled far enough that the realm was just a distant memory. Sometimes I'd catch rumors, news traveling with merchant caravans or whispered in taverns. Gregory's rule was harsh, brutal. The rogue attacks had increased, not decreased. The peace Darius had spent 30 years building was crumbling. I told myself I didn't care. That realm wasn't mine anymore. That throne had never really been mine. I was Jerome Nobody, a drifter with a wolf sleeping so deep he barely existed. But late at night, I'd dream of Ash, of Darius's face, of Gregory's betrayal, and my wolf would wake up screaming. Age 25 found me working on a farm in human lands, far enough from any pack that I couldn't even smell wolf scent on the wind. The work was hard, dawn to dusk in the fields, tending crops for a family who barely spoke to me. Perfect. I'd learned to crave the silence, the nothingness, the absence of pack bonds and alpha expectations. Out here, I wasn't weak, wasn't strong, wasn't anything. I was free. Or so I told myself. Then came the night that changed everything. I was walking back from the fields, muscles aching, mind blissfully empty, when I caught the scent. Wolf. Rogue. And beneath it all, the unmistakable stink of Gregory's pack. They'd found me. Impossible. I'd been so careful. 13 years of hiding, of running, of being nobody. How? I didn't wait to find out, didn't pack, didn't say goodbye to the family I'd worked for. I just ran, my wolf surging awake after years of dormancy, screaming at me to move, move, move. The scouts followed, but they weren't trying to kill me. They were tracking me, hurting me. Gregory didn't want me dead anymore. He wanted to know where I'd run to. So I gave them exactly what they expected, a coward fleeing into the wilderness. I led them in circles for 3 days, doubling back, crossing rivers, doing everything possible to confuse my trail. On the 4th day, I killed them. Not in a fight. Not honorably. I ambushed them in the night while they slept, my wolf finally, embracing what I'd become. Not an alpha, not a warrior, a survivor. I buried their bodies deep and kept running, but something had shifted in me. Gregory was actively searching now. The funeral story hadn't satisfied him. He needed to know for certain that his rival was dead, which meant he was afraid, and fear made wolves dangerous. I was 30 years old, still living like a ghost, when I stumbled onto the estate. Literally stumbled. I'd been running from another pack of Gregory's scouts, wounded and exhausted, when I collapsed at the edge of a human settlement. Not just any settlement. A noble family's country estate. I knew I should move, should drag myself back into the wilderness. But I was so tired. 13 years of running. 13 years of nothing. So when the door opened and a woman found me bleeding on her doorstep, I didn't even have the strength to be afraid. I just looked up at her and waited for whatever came next. What came next was Dorothy, and she changed everything. Chapter 5. The Woman Who Saw Everything. You're bleeding on my roses. That was the first thing Dorothy ever said to me. Not, are you dying? Not, should I call for help? Just a simple observation, delivered in a tone that suggested bleeding on roses was a minor inconvenience, rather than the result of near death. I managed to focus my blurring vision on her. Mid-20s, maybe. Dark hair pulled back in a practical braid. Dressed like nobility, but kneeling in the dirt like she belonged there. And her scent. Gods, her scent. Lavender and honey and something else. Something that made my wolf sit up and pay attention for the first time in years. Sorry, I rasped. About the roses. She studied me with eyes the color of forest shadow. Not brown, not quite green. Calculating. Seeing more than I wanted her to see. You're a wolf, she said simply. My heart stuttered. What? A wolf. Shifter. Whatever you people call yourselves." She tilted her head. "Did you think humans don't notice? You smell different, move different. Your eyes do that thing in moonlight. I should have run, should have vanished into the night. But I was bleeding out and exhausted, and so damn tired of running." "Going to turn me in?" I managed. Dorothy considered this. Then she stood, brushed dirt from her skirts, and offered me her hand. "Can you walk?" What? "Walk. Stand. Move on your own legs. Because if you can't, I'll need to get help, and that creates questions I'd rather not answer." She waggled her fingers impatiently. "So, can you walk?" I took her hand. Her skin was warm against my cold fingers, and when she pulled, I felt strength I hadn't expected. Not supernatural strength, just the quiet power of someone who'd never been taught she couldn't do hard things. I made it 2 steps before my legs gave out. Dorothy caught me with a grunt, slinging my arm over her shoulders. "Stubborn," she muttered. "Wonderful. My favorite kind of patient." "Patient? Would you prefer corpse? Because that's your other option." She half dragged, half carried me through her garden and into the estate through a servant's entrance. The house was big but not ostentatious. Old money rather than new, comfort over display. Everything smelled like her. Lavender and honey and safety. Dorothy deposited me in a small room near the kitchens, probably servants' quarters. She left and returned with an armful of supplies, bandages, water, something that smelled medicinal. "This will hurt," she warned. Then she started cleaning my wounds, and she was right. It hurt like hell. But I'd learned to swallow pain years ago. What I hadn't learned was how to handle kindness. "Why are you helping me?" I asked as she wrapped my ribs. "Because you're bleeding." "You don't know me. I could be dangerous." "You are dangerous." She met my eyes, and there was no fear in hers, just certainty. "You're also exhausted and wounded, and about 5 minutes from passing out. So right now, I'm more dangerous than you." Despite everything, I almost smiled. "You're very strange." "I'm practical." She tied off the bandage. "Also, you looked at my roses like you were apologizing to them personally. Dangerous men don't apologize to flowers." "Maybe I'm just very polite. Or very desperate." Her gaze softened slightly. "Which is it?" I should have lied. Should have given her some story that would make me seem less broken. Instead, I told the truth. Both. Dorothy nodded, like that was exactly the answer she'd expected. She stood, gathering her supplies. "There's food in the kitchen. Help yourself. Don't steal anything. Don't shift in the house. My father has hunting rifles and a temper. And don't expect me to keep your secrets forever." "How long, then?" She paused at the door, considering. "Until you're healed. After that, you're on your own." Her expression turned serious. "Whatever you're running from, it's bad enough that you'd rather bleed out than seek help. I won't ask questions, but I won't harbor someone who brings violence to my family's door." "I would never." "Yes, you would." She said it without judgment, just fact. "If you had to choose between your life and mine, you'd choose yours. Everyone does." Before I could argue, she was gone. I stayed because I was too weak to leave. That's what I told myself the first night, and the second, and the third. But by the 4th night, I started admitting the truth. I stayed because Dorothy made me feel human again. She'd appear every morning with food and fresh bandages, her routine efficient and impersonal. But slowly, things changed. She'd linger after dressing my wounds, making idle conversation, asking safe questions, where I'd traveled, what I'd seen, what human settlements were like, never asking about the pack. never asking why I ran. A week passed, then 2. My wounds healed with supernatural speed, my wolf finally stirring from his long hibernation. I should have left then, should have thanked Dorothy and disappeared like smoke. Instead, I started helping around the estate. Small things at first, fixing a broken fence, chopping wood, clearing paths. Dorothy's father barely noticed me, too absorbed in his books and business to care about a drifter his daughter had taken pity on. But Dorothy noticed everything. "You're not leaving," she observed one evening as we walked through her garden. "I will. Soon." "You've been saying that for 3 weeks." I had no answer to that. The moon rose over the trees nearly full, calling to my wolf. I felt the familiar restlessness, the need to shift and run. But for the first time in 13 years, I didn't want to be alone. "Can I ask you something?" Dorothy stopped beside her roses, the ones I'd bled on that first night. They'd survived, blooming red and defiant. "You can ask." "What are you so afraid of?" Everything, I wanted to say. Gregory. The throne I'd never wanted. The pack that had rejected me. The violence that followed me like a shadow. "Being seen," I said instead. Dorothy turned to face me, and in the moonlight her eyes held understanding far beyond her years. "Too late for that," she said softly. "I see you." That should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like coming home. I stayed another week, then a month, then a season, and slowly, impossibly, I started to believe I could be something other than a survivor. I could be a man. Dorothy's man, if she'd have me. But fate, I'd learned, was rarely that kind. Chapter 6. When Ghosts Return. I turned 31. I'd been at Dorothy's estate for 8 months when Gregory's wolves found me again. Not scouts this time. A full hunting party. And they weren't trying to be subtle. I smelled them 3 hours before they arrived. 15 wolves, all bearing Gregory's pack scent, moving with the coordinated purpose of trained killers. They weren't tracking. They knew where I was. Someone had talked. Somehow Gregory had learned I was alive and exactly where to find me. I could have run. Should have run. Grabbed whatever I could carry and disappeared into the wilderness like I'd done 100 times before. But 8 months with Dorothy had made me soft, made me stupid, made me want to fight. "You need to leave." Dorothy stood in the doorway of the servants' quarters, her arms crossed. She'd sensed my tension all morning, the way my wolf paced beneath my skin. "They're coming for me." "I know. You should go inside, lock the doors, pretend you never saw me." "Jerome, please." I finally met her eyes, and whatever she saw there made her flinch. "If they find you've been harboring me, they'll kill you. Slowly. As a message. And if I let you face 15 wolves alone, then I'd die fighting instead of running. Seems fair." Dorothy crossed the space between us in 3 strides and slapped me hard across the face. I stared at her, shocked. "Fair?" Her voice shook with rage. "You think dying is fair? After everything? After—" She cut herself off, breathing hard. "You don't get to give up. Not now. Not after making me." She didn't finish. Didn't need to. I caught her hand, pressing it against my cheek where she'd struck me. Her skin was warm. Alive. Everything I'd thought I'd lost. "I'm not giving up," I said quietly. "I'm protecting you. By dying? If necessary. You're an idiot." "Probably." The wolves broke through the tree line just after sunset. 15 of them, just like I'd scented. They shifted as they approached the estate, becoming men and women in Gregory's colors. The leader, a massive beta with scars crisscrossing his chest, stepped forward. "Jerome of No Pack," he called. "Alpha King Gregory requires your presence. Come peacefully and the humans won't be harmed." I stood in the garden, alone, my wolf pressing against my skin. Behind me, I felt Dorothy watching from the window, felt her fear and anger and something else, something that made my chest ache. "Gregory sent 15 wolves for one dead man," I called back. "He must be terrified." The beta snarled. "Last chance. Come now or we drag you." "Try it." They attacked together, coordinated and brutal. But I'd spent 13 years learning to fight dirty, learning to survive when I should have died. I'd never been the strongest wolf, never been the fastest, but I'd always been the most stubborn. I shifted mid-leap, my wolf erupting with a violence that left me dizzy. We met the first 3 attackers head-on, going for throats and soft bellies, fighting with the desperate fury of something cornered. I took down 2 before they organized. Felt satisfaction burn through me as they fell, bleeding. For Darius, my wolf snarled. For the years they stole. But 15 against 1 were impossible odds. They dragged me down through sheer numbers, teeth and claws tearing, overwhelming. I was about to black out when I heard it. A roar that shook the ground. An alpha command so powerful it froze every wolf mid-attack. But it didn't come from the hunting party. It came from the house. Dorothy stood on the porch, her eyes blazing gold, not human brown anymore. Her scent had changed too, no longer just lavender and honey. Now it carried the unmistakable musk of wolf, of power, of alpha. "Enough!" The command rippled through the hunting party like thunder. I felt them struggle against it, confused, trying to understand how a human woman could carry alpha authority. The scarred beta found his voice. Who? "I am Dorothy Thornwood, daughter of Alpha Marcus Thornwood of the Mountain Pack." Her voice carried absolute certainty. "And you are trespassing on my family's territory. This is neutral land. This is my land. And that wolf is under my protection. If Gregory wants him, he goes through me first." The beta actually laughed. 1 female alpha against 15 warriors? Gregory will hear about this. He'll what? Declare war on the Mountain Pack? Dorothy's smile was all teeth. "Tell him to try. Tell him Dorothy Thornwood is done hiding. And tell him if he sends wolves after what's mine again, I'll deliver their heads to his throne personally." The hunting party retreated, uncertain and off balance. But as they melted back into the forest, the beta's eyes promised this wasn't over. When they were gone, Dorothy's false confidence crumbled. She collapsed on the porch steps, shaking, her eyes fading back to brown. I shifted and stumbled toward her, bleeding and furious. "What the hell was that?" "That was me saving your stupid life." "You're a wolf? You've been hiding, lying." "I didn't lie. I just didn't volunteer information." She met my eyes, defiant even in her exhaustion. "My father sent me here to hide from pack politics. I'm supposed to be choosing a mate, but I refused every option he presented. So he sent me to our human estate until I came to my senses. You should have told me." "Would you have stayed if you knew?" "Yes," I wanted to say, but we both knew I would have run, would have convinced myself I was protecting her by leaving. "Dorothy, I don't regret it," she said fiercely. "Any of it. But Gregory knows now, and he'll come for both of us." "Then we run." "I'm done running." She stood, steadier now. "You've been running for 13 years, Jerome. How's that worked out? Not well. Not well at all. What are you suggesting? Dorothy's smile turned sharp. Dangerous. I'm suggesting we stop running. We go to my father. We gather allies. And we take back what Gregory stole. You're insane. Probably. She offered me her hand. But I'm also right. I looked at her hand. Small, human-looking, but containing alpha power that had just scattered 15 trained warriors. Then I looked at her face and saw the same determination I'd seen that first night when she'd found me bleeding on her roses. You looked at my roses like you were apologizing to them personally. Dangerous men don't apologize to flowers. Maybe I wasn't dangerous enough. Maybe it was time to change that. I took her hand. 15 years, I said. That's how long it will take. Minimum. Then we'd better get started. And just like that, the war began. Chapter 7. The Cost of Choosing. They say war is hell. They're wrong. Hell is clean. Absolute. You know exactly where you stand. War is mud and blood, and watching your mate give birth to twins while assassins circle your safe house. War is learning your son's first word is danger instead of mama. War is seeing your daughter's eyes track movement like she's cataloging threats instead of marveling at butterflies. War is 15 years of small victories and catastrophic losses. The first year, we secured Dorothy's father's support. Alpha Marcus wasn't thrilled his daughter had mated a dead heir, but he was even less thrilled that Gregory had sent warriors onto his territory. The mountain pack joined our cause, small but fierce. The second year, we gathered more allies, smaller packs who'd suffered under Gregory's brutal rule. Wolves who remembered what Darius had built and mourned what Gregory had destroyed. By the third year, we had an army. By the fourth, we had a war. Dorothy and I married quietly in year 2. No ceremony, no celebration. Just her hand in mine and a shared promise. We survived this together, or not at all. The twins came in year 3. Kearney and Obed, born on the same storm-dark night their grandfather Darius had died. Dorothy labored for 20 hours while enemies circled outside. I held her hand and tried not to think about how many ways we could lose everything in one night. But she survived. They survived. And for 3 perfect days, we pretended we were just a family. Then Gregory sent assassins, and we went back to war. The hardest part wasn't the fighting. I'd been fighting my whole life, physically or mentally, it made no difference. The hardest part was watching my sons grow up in war camps instead of homes. Watching Dorothy transform from the woman who'd found me in her garden to a warrior alpha who could command armies without flinching. Watching us both become the kind of people who checked for poison before eating, who slept with weapons, who taught our 4-year-old sons how to recognize enemy scents. Year 7 nearly broke us. Dorothy had gone to negotiate with a neutral pack, taking both boys with her. I'd argued against it, too dangerous, too exposed, but she'd insisted they needed to see diplomacy, not just violence. The ambush came at dawn. Gregory's wolves killed 6 of Dorothy's guards before my warriors drove them back. When I reached the safe house, I found Dorothy standing over our son's bed, blood spattered and shaking, her wolf barely contained. Kearney was crying. Obed was silent, his small face too pale, too still. "He's breathing," Dorothy said before I could ask, "but he won't speak, won't move. Jerome, he watched them kill his nursemaid, watched her throat get torn out trying to protect him, and now he just..." She broke then, finally, collapsing into my arms while our sons needed us to be strong. I held her and felt my own control fracture, rage and fear and grief boiling over. How much longer can we do this? But Obed recovered. Slowly, painfully, but he recovered. And we kept fighting because stopping meant Gregory won. Meant every death, every sacrifice, every night our sons cried themselves to sleep had been for nothing. Year 10 brought new allies and new losses. Alpha Marcus died in battle, leaving Dorothy as sole alpha of the mountain pack. She wore the grief like armor, channeling pain into purpose. Year 12, we finally cornered Gregory's forces at the Blood River. 3 days of fighting. Hundreds dead on both sides. And at the end of it, we'd pushed him back to his stronghold. Victory tasted like ash. Year 13 changed everything. The boys were 10 now, old enough to shift, old enough to understand exactly what we were fighting for. Kearney was fire and fury, eager to prove himself. Obed was thoughtful, watchful, reminding me uncomfortably of myself at that age. We'd left them at our strongest safe house, guarded by 20 warriors. Impenetrable. Safe. Gregory sent 50 rogues. They didn't want prisoners. Didn't want information. They wanted to send a message. We found Obed in his bed, throat torn, eyes still open. Kearney was alive but broken, having watched his twin die while warriors fought and failed to reach them in time. Dorothy didn't scream, didn't cry. She just went very, very still. Then she started planning Gregory's death with a focus that terrified me. "Dorothy, wait!" "No." Her voice was ice. "We've waited 13 years. Our son is dead. Our other son watched him die. We're done waiting. If we attack now, driven by grief, we'll make mistakes." "I'm not driven by grief." She finally looked at me, and her eyes held something worse than anger. Worse than pain. They held certainty. "I'm driven by clarity. Gregory will never stop, never surrender. So we end him. Now, tonight. The plan. Changes." She cupped my face, and her hands were gentle despite the steel in her voice. "Jerome, listen to me. If you lose yourself to vengeance, I will have buried both my sons and my husband. Please, don't make me fight this war alone." Her words cut through my rage, anchoring me, reminding me of what I'd almost forgotten. We weren't doing this for vengeance. We were doing this so Kearney could grow up in peace, so no other mother buried her children, so the realm Darius built could be reborn. I pulled Dorothy close, breathing in her scent, still lavender and honey beneath the blood and war. "Together," I promised. "Always together." She nodded against my chest. 2 years later, we finally cornered Gregory. Not in battle, not with armies. Just him and me in the throne room he'd stolen. The same room where Darius had named me heir, where my life had fractured into before and after. Gregory looked older now, hollower. His mate, Selena, was dead. He'd killed her himself when she'd opposed his cruelty. His own people feared him. Even his allies had abandoned him. He stood alone on a throne built from blood. "So," he said as I entered, Dorothy at my side, Kearney waiting outside. "The dead boy returns. How poetic." "This ends tonight," I said quietly. "Does it?" Gregory smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You kill me? What changes? You take the throne I rightfully earned? You think the pack will accept you after 15 years of war?" "I don't want the throne." That surprised him. "Then what do you want?" "Peace. For my son. For Dorothy. For every wolf who died because you couldn't let go of power. Noble. Gregory's smile turned sharp. But peace requires strength. Do you really think you can hold the realm together? You, who couldn't even hold your own life together? No, I admitted. I can't. But my son can. I saw understanding dawn in Gregory's eyes, then rage. You'd give the throne to your pup? He's barely 15. He's more alpha at 15 than you ever were. Dorothy's voice cut like ice. He leads because he cares, not because he takes. Gregory shifted then, not to wolf, but to attack. Pure, desperate fury. We met him together. It wasn't clean, wasn't honorable. It was brutal and ugly and necessary. When it ended, Gregory lay bleeding on the stolen throne, his eyes already glazing. You'll fail, he whispered, just like Darius. Just like... He didn't finish. The realm was ours, and I'd never felt emptier. Chapter 8. The throne refused. I was 46 when the coronation was supposed to be mine. The entire realm had gathered. Every alpha, every pack, every wolf who'd survived 15 years of war. They filled the sacred clearing where we'd buried Darius, where I'd nearly died at my adoptive father's funeral. Full circle, some said. Destiny, others whispered. I stood at the center of it all and felt nothing but exhaustion. Beta Marcus approached with the crown, an ancient thing, worn by generations of Alpha Kings, heavy with history and expectation. Jerome, heir of King Darius, survivor of war. Do you accept the throne of the United Pax? Every eye was on me. Every wolf waiting for me to claim what I'd bled for, fought for, sacrificed for. I looked at Dorothy, saw understanding in her eyes, saw permission. Then I looked at Kearney, 16 now, strong and certain in everything an alpha should be. Everything I'd never been. No, I said quietly. Shock rippled through the crowd. Beta Marcus froze, crown still extended. My lord, you must... I am not your lord. I never was. I turned to address the gathered packs, my voice carrying across the clearing. King Darius made me his heir out of love, not wisdom. I was never strong enough, never alpha enough. I survived when I should have died, but survival doesn't make you a king. You won the war. My mate won the war. My son survived it. I just refused to die. I felt Dorothy's hand slip into mine, steady and sure. A throne paid for with this much blood should never be sat upon by the wolves who bled for it. It should go to someone who'll remember the cost, who'll choose peace over power, who'll lead because it's right, not because it's deserved. I gestured to Kearney, who stepped forward, uncertain but unafraid. I name Kearney my heir. Let him be Alpha King. Let him build what we destroyed, and let the rest of us, the warriors, the survivors, finally rest. The realm erupted in debate. Some agreed, others protested. But when Dorothy stepped forward and placed her hand on Kearney's shoulder, the arguments faded. He's ready, she said simply, and more importantly, we're done. Beta Marcus looked at Kearney. Do you accept? My son met my eyes, and I saw the question there. Are you sure? I nodded. Kearney turned to the crowd and said, I accept. On one condition, my parents retire in peace. No more war, no more fighting. They've earned their rest. The crown that should have been mine settled on my son's head, and for the first time in 30 years, I felt something like peace. Epilogue. What survives? Grandfather finished his story as the fire burned to embers. His hands had stopped trembling. His eyes were clear. I sat in silence, processing everything. The legend I'd grown up hearing wasn't wrong exactly, just incomplete. You were never meant to be Alpha, I said slowly, but you became one anyway. No. Jerome shook his head. I became a survivor who learned to lead. There's a difference. Is there? He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him all night. Your father is Alpha because he wants to protect. I was Alpha because I wanted to survive. One builds, the other merely endures. But you built too. You ended Gregory, gave us peace. I ended a war, Martha. That's not the same as building peace. He reached out, touching my cheek gently. Your father built peace. Your mother maintained it. I just cleared the ground. And grandmother? I asked softly. What did she do? Everything. His voice cracked slightly. She saved me, loved me, fought beside me, and forgave me every time I chose war over wisdom. He paused. When she died last winter, I thought about following her, just letting go. But she made me promise something. What? To tell you the truth, all of it. So you'd understand that power isn't destiny, that being Alpha isn't about being chosen, it's about choosing. Every day. To lead. To protect. To sacrifice. I thought about my own wolf, restless inside me, about the expectations that came with being heir to an Alpha King, about the weight of carrying my grandfather's legend. What if I don't want to choose? I whispered. Jerome pulled me close, and I smelled the same scent Dorothy must have smelled that first night. Pine and storm and survival. Then you don't, he said gently. That's the whole point. Darius tried to force a throne on me. Gregory stole one. I refused one. Your father earned his. He pulled back to look at me. But you, Martha, you get to decide. No pressure. No expectations. Just choice. That's still a lot of pressure. I know, he smiled. But it's better than destiny. We sat together as the fire died, grandfather and granddaughter, while the moon climbed higher. Outside I heard wolves running, my father's pack, patrolling, protecting, maintaining the peace grandfather had died for. Not died, survived for. There was a difference. Grandfather? I said softly. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for listening. He stood slowly, his old joints protesting. Now go. Run. Be young. Be free. Be whatever you choose to be. I shifted and ran into the night, my wolf singing with joy and freedom and possibility. Behind me, through the window, I saw grandfather watching. Not a legend, not a king, just an old wolf who'd survived long enough to tell his story. And somehow, that was enough. The end.